Yesterday in our Wonderful Day in the Lord broadcast, we look at this beautiful window of hope that is found right in the midst of despair in the book of Job. As Job has battled with so much loss and so much hurt and so much pain, and as he's been dealing with his friends who are not helping a bit, they're making false accusations, their worldview has skewed their understanding of life. And as Job himself has revealed that he struggles with God. He doesn't understand why God has done this. At times he sees God as wronging him and as being his enemy and having abandoned him. None of those things are true, but this is the way Job feels, and he's articulated that. And he wants people to know of his pain. And then right at the peak of all that, in chapter 19, he talks in verses 25 to 27 about this hope of his Redeemer who lives. This is not the end. No matter what happens, the Lord is still living, and he will ultimately deliver and rescue Job from this life. And he will see the Lord in eternity, and he knows there's an afterlife. As we come to that thought, I want to pull over and park a little bit on that issue, because in the Old Testament there is very little revelation concerning the afterlife. For the most part, when people die in the Old Testament, it said they went to be with their fathers or their forefathers. Doesn't say much about that. Doesn't say what that looks like. We have a lot more revelation in the New Testament that fills out the picture. We know a lot more about the afterlife and eternity, but they didn't have that much in the Old Testament, including the issue of the resurrection. So Job chapter 19 here, these verses are one of the three major passages in the Old Testament that give us hope of the afterlife and some insight into the afterlife and the resurrection. I want to take us today to the other two major passages. One is Psalm 16. And in Psalm 16, we find verses 10 and 11 that speak on this subject. It says, "For you will not abandon my soul to Sheol," that's the grave. "You will not allow your Holy One to undergo decay. And you will make known to me the path of life. In your presence is fullness of joy, and in your right hand there are pleasures forevermore." Now, these verses actually are going to be used in the New Testament to speak of Christ not staying in the tomb. But David was also writing, I think, of himself here. Our bodies will not stay in the grave. We will not. Our final destiny is not to turn to dust. Our bodies will turn to dust in time after our death, but that's not our final destiny. He will not allow us to stay there because he will resurrect us from that. And that takes us back to Daniel chapter 12, which is the key passage of the Old Testament concerning the resurrection and what the Lord has planned for us after this life. Verses 1 and 2 of Daniel is very, very helpful to us. It says, "Now at that time," and he's speaking now of the time at the end when the Lord comes back to set up his kingdom on earth. He says, "At that time, Michael, the great prince, who stands guards over the sons of your people, will arise, and there will be a time of distress such as never occurred since there was a nation until that time. And at that time, your people, everyone who's found written in the book, will be rescued." So he speaks of what we call the tribulation period, this great tribulation coming on the earth in judgment against those who've rejected Christ. The Antichrist will lead that charge, energized by the devil, and that's what he speaks of. But at that point, everyone who's written in the book, those who are true believers, it says will be rescued, delivered, the Redeemer that Job speaks of. "Many of those who sleep in the dust of the ground will awake, and these to everlasting life, but to the others to disgrace and everlasting contempt." So the Old Testament teaches a general resurrection. It doesn't parse it out as the details. The New Testament will do that for us. But in the Old Testament, we have this fact that no one will stay in the grave forever. There will be a resurrection of the righteous and a resurrection of the lost. And the ones who know the Lord will be given everlasting life. And those who have rejected the Lord will be resurrected to disgrace, and everlasting contempt. And so a final judgment for them. So that's pretty much what the Old Testament teaches us. There will be a resurrection of the dead of all people, but their eternal destiny is determined by their relationship with the Lord Jesus Christ. And I would add to that, if you don't know for certain of your relationship with Jesus Christ, we would love to show you how to know that you are safe in Him, that you have a Redeemer who has rescued you from your sin. Give us a call sometime or an email. We'll be glad to talk to you about your relationship with Christ.